how long does it take to get the fuel and the oxidizer into the Falcon 9 before launch time. And as long as the launch escape system is armed, which is a pretty quick command and pretty instantaneous for those valves to change, it's more that they have to back out how much time does it take to fuel the rocket and make sure they preserve that amount of time.
Again, we're going to stand by for what we expect to be a decision.
Dragon SpaceX, at this time your go for 6.4 arm launch escape system. Team is confident that we understand the issue well enough to proceed into LES arm, and it's within existing analysis.
Dragon copy. Go to close visors. Visors closed. We are arming the launch escape system.
Copy.
And with that call out, again, arming the launch escape system, one of the major milestones before liftoff today at 10:53 p.m. and 38 seconds Eastern Time from Kennedy Space Center here in Florida to send 3 astronauts and 1 cosmonaut to the International Space Station. This is the Crew-8 launch, and you're watching the live broadcast of it.
So you heard the acknowledgement for them to go ahead and complete the procedure. So you expect that you'll hear some.
Launch escape system is verified armed.
Now, needing to use the launch escape system, it's just a possibility we have to plan for. No one wants to think about it, but it is something we have to plan for.
Yeah, actually, it makes the overall launch safer because you have an alternative if there's something wrong with the F9 rocket. So yeah, you're absolutely correct. You wouldn't want to have to use it, but the fact that we built that into these commercial crew vehicles is a huge safety improvement over the past. And it looks like they're starting loading prop now, which is the next major step. And so now that the launch escape system is armed, they can start putting the prop onto the vehicle. You'll start to hear calls. And again, the crew can actually feel some of these things. They don't actually have direct insight into the actual fuel levels inside the Falcon 9, but they have a timeline inside the Dragon that gives them a sense of
propellant load has started.
There's a call out confirming that propellant load has started on schedule at T-minus 35 minutes from liftoff.
And so at this point, the crew, like I mentioned, with the launch escape system armed, is pretty much in flight mode. So they're watching the timeline and will be monitoring the calls they get from the ground as that kind of layout if the prop loading is happening according to timeline. And then for us watching on TV, a really super easy way to see how full it is just as the condensation comes off the rocket. That gives you a sense of how far up the fuel has filled inside the tanks as the cooled fuel and oxidizer go into the tank and then evaporate.
Yeah, right now we have RP1 or rocket grade kerosene going in, and also liquid oxygen loading on the first stage.
And again, the reason, just like with the LES arming or the launch escape system arming, as well as the prop loading, they make those calls to the crew so that when you hear these clunks and thuds and kind of ringing of the vehicle, that that was supposed to happen, as opposed to, without a call or without the timeline they have. If you just hear a very loud thud, it's kind of just like in your house. You're like, what was that? So this just kind of keeps everyone in sync as to the things they're seeing, feeling, and hearing are normal.
So inside Dragon Endeavour right now, we have Commander Matt Dominic, born and raised in Wheat Ridge, Colorado, married to Faith Dominic, and they have 2 daughters. He has a Master of Science degree in Systems Engineering from the Naval Postgraduate School, designated a Naval Aviator in 2007, made 2 deployments to the North Arabian Sea. He has more than 1,600 hours of flight time
Dragon
in
SpaceX
28 different aircraft.
Go ahead.
Yeah, hey, want to get back with you and chat about that LES arming time pressure. Summary, we saw a small crack on the side hatch seal at the top of the hatch. Main concern is re-entry heating soaking through a damaged seal. We do believe the crack is small enough to be bounded with margin by existing analysis. but the team is still working it and double checking. How copy?
Second copy.
So you heard the call there, essentially saying they gave them the okay to arm the launch escape system, but that does not necessarily mean they're totally comfortable or have finished the analysis for what they saw in those hatch seal photos. So just giving the crew the update that clearly they're not going to let them launch if they're not confident, but it sounds like they believe, based on the analysis they've done so far, they have margin for the worst case, which is another word for bounding scenario. You heard him mention that. But basically what they're doing now is prop loading in parallel with that.
Right, because that call out gave us some insight into why there was a delay in arming the launch escape system. They basically said there was a small crack in the side hatch seal, and the concern of that crack would be during reentry.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So I think obviously, like we've talked many times throughout the broadcast, you've got some of the best experts in the world on both the SpaceX and the NASA side looking at the data. I think it really shows the importance. Early on we were ahead of time, but all the pictures and photos they were taking of the hatch seal, and this kind of demonstrates exactly why they do that. Because now, when we don't have access to the hatch and we can't just open it up and take a look, we can pore over those photos, go back to the SMEs, the REs, as you heard them called, the responsible engineers, the subject matter experts, and use that photo evidence compared to the analysis and the development verification information to make sure that we're confident that everything's good to go.
Right. Because as I said, they believe it's small enough
Start
to
of stage
fix.
1 cryo-helium loading.
Stage 1 cryo loading, as you said.
Cryo-helium.
Yeah.
Yeah, so helium, so you mentioned before, there's RP1 is the fuel, and then liquid oxygen is the oxidizer. What pressurizes those propellants is helium. So not only do you have to load the fuel, the oxidizer, but you also have to load gas to then push those fuels into the engines.
T-minus 30 minutes, 19 minutes and counting to T0. As Raja was saying, propellant loading is happening on the Falcon 9, but there is an issue still in review, which is a small crack in the side hatch seal. The team briefed the crew just a few minutes ago, saying that they are reviewing it, but they believe it is small enough to fix. And that is why propellant loading continues.
Correct, yeah. Yeah, so at this point, the crew is kind of just going through procedures and talking through the ascent. Again, the next big point for them will be at about T-minus 10 minutes where they'll start, again, talking back and forth to the ground. Sounds like maybe they might get an update as well, as my guess. They'll probably get an update about that point from the ground control team.
And as we wait for updates, we recently got to ask the Crew-8 astronauts why they believe human spaceflight is so important. And here's what they had to say.
Everything we learn on space station enables our technology, it increases our knowledge, and it burns down our risk as we go further.
As explorers, we're looking at ways to further human knowledge, human experience.
Как сказал однажды Константин Эдуардович Циолковский, наша Земля — это колыбель человечества. Но не может человечество все время оставаться в колыбели. Поэтому именно за счет того, что мы нарабатываем сейчас пилотируемыми полетами.
People are so different on Earth. The more people we get into space, the more things we learn about what happens to their body in space, the more we learn to move humanity further to the moon and then ultimately to Mars.
The experiments that we'll conduct help with radiation, how to grow plants in space, how to get the human body to last longer outside of Earth's protection.
In zero gravity, we've actually discovered physiological processes, how the body works, that we didn't even know existed without finding them first in space. That includes mechanisms to lower your blood volume to adapt to a weightless environment, mechanisms that store sodium in your body, which we didn't know existed, ways that the human can control its cardiovascular system that we didn't know existed.
Every single human that's ever been born and ever died has all happened on our planet Earth. And if we want to continue the light of consciousness further, we need to make ourselves multiplanetary.
Go further we will, go further we must, but we want to have that deck stacked in our favor as much as possible, and our mission will definitely contribute to that.
T-minus 27 minutes and 10 seconds and counting to launch. Let's head back to Jasmine Hopkins, who's now with NASA Administrator Bill Nelson and Deputy Administrator Pam Melroy.
Thank you so much, Megan. As always, it's an honor to have our NASA leadership here for our launch. And of course, we know there's a couple of watch items right now with Crew-8, but both of our leaders right here have been to space before. So actually, can you guys talk about why safety is so paramount in human spaceflight?
Well, you're dealing with a very unforgiving environment with a lot of explosive power, and you're defying the laws of gravity. And as a result, everything has to be right, so you don't launch until it's right. Now, Pam is an astronaut space shuttle commander. She's flown 3 times in space. I've flown once. And you've been through this many times. You didn't have as many scrubs as we had on ours. We got in, strapped in, ready to go, and scrubbed 4 times over the better part of a month. But that pretty well tells you you don't launch until it's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right, Bill. I had several scrubs of my own, delayed 6 days for my first flight, 3 days for my second, had a couple of strap-ins. You're right, not as many as you. But I think, it's important to remember that the crew is very focused on their mission on the space station, and it's not like they're saying, hey, I've got to get home for something. They're going to wait until they're safe, and that's
Stage
the way
2,
we
cryo
feel
helium
too.
loading has
As
started.
Bill said, a lot of things have to go right, and we're going to keep safety number one.
Right. Thank you so much for mentioning that. And of course, we're on our 8th rotational flight with SpaceX. It feels like just yesterday, Demo 2 launched. So can Bill Nelson, can you speak to the progress of the Commercial Crew program?
Well, it's unbelievable. Just think how much the cost of launching has come down as a fact of reusing the rockets. And just the Falcon 9 has been such a proven workhorse. This past year, they launched Falcon 9s, if you can believe it, 96 times. This year, they're going to launch 146 times. And next year, 200 times. Wow, it's a workhorse.
Oh yeah, it definitely is. And we've had a lot of success with SpaceX already this year with the launch of PACE to help study our climate. We also had a successful landing on the moon for the first time in over 50 years. So Pam, can you speak to what's next for SpaceX and NASA together?
Well, Jasmine, it's amazing what's coming up. First of all, the crew is going to have a very exciting increment. They have over 200 science experiments that they'll be running, including several medical experiments that will benefit all humanity. But while they're there, they're going to have some very exciting visitors. We're really looking forward to seeing Sonny Williams and Butch Wilmore launch on the Boeing Starliner on the first crewed flight test of that brand new human spaceflight vehicle. They'll be visiting the station. And then, if we stay on schedule, this increment will also see a new cargo vehicle going up with Sierra Space's Dream Chaser. And then you look at the rest of what we're doing in science. We have an eclipse coming up. It'll be the last eclipse visible in North America for almost 2 decades. And then we'll be launching NISAR, which is our partnership with India to look at the Earth. And we also have the X-59, our new X-plane, quiet supersonic boom coming up. And then, of course, the Artemis II crew, you're going to be seeing a lot of them down here in Florida as they're training for their mission next year. This is a pretty thrilling year. We got a lot going on.
It really is. There's so much going on. But, of course, we still want to keep our eyes right now on Crew-8. So thank you so much, Bill and Pam, for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, our friends at SpaceX, back to you.
As we continue to count down, let's take a closer look at the vehicles that will be taking Crew-8 to the International Space Station tonight. Sitting atop the Falcon 9, the Dragon spacecraft and its trunk stands over 26 feet tall. There are 2 windows on the spacecraft, plus 1 under the nose cone. The nose cone opens shortly after launch to expose the forward bulkhead thrusters and docking mechanism that will connect with the space station. Dragon's trunk holds solar cells, which power Dragon while it's in free flight. The trunk can also carry unpressurized cargo.
And Dragon has 16 Draco thrusters that can be used in space to help navigate the spacecraft to its destination, each providing 90 pounds of force. That doesn't include the 8 Super Draco thrusters used for an abort, which are no longer active once the crew is in orbit.
For those of you following along, you'll know that the Dragon spacecraft has played a significant role in advancing our future in space by safely transporting crew to and from the space station. There are currently 4 Dragon spacecraft supporting human spaceflight missions that have docked to the station: Endeavour, Resilience, Endurance, and Freedom.
Crew-8 will fly aboard Endeavour tonight, which previously flew NASA's SpaceX Demo Mission 2, Crew-2, and Crew-6, in addition to Axiom's first mission, the very first commercial astronaut mission to the International Space Station. Altogether, the reusable Dragon spacecraft has completed 7 human spaceflight missions on behalf of NASA and visited the space station 38 times under NASA's commercial resupply and commercial crew programs.
As always, Dragon will be delivered to orbit today by SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket, which provides 1.7 million pounds of thrust on its first stage thanks to its 9 Merlin M1D engines. Once the first and second stages separate, these engines are also used to help land the first stage. The first stage will perform 3 burns as it makes its way back toward Earth today. First is the boost back burn, and that's where 3 of the M1D engines will reignite to help flip the first stage around to head back to the launch site. The second burn is the entry burn, and that's where a single engine will reignite to help slow Falcon 9 down as it prepares to enter the Earth's atmosphere again. Finally is the landing burn, and that's where 3 engines will slow down the rocket enough to perform a precision landing back down on landing zone 1.
Meanwhile, the second stage continues to orbit, powered by 1 single Merlin vacuum engine with over 220,000 pounds of thrust. The second stage will secure Dragon's entry into low Earth orbit. And we did just hear that call out that stage 1 RP1 load is complete. That's great. We're continuing to check through these milestones, now almost less than 20 minutes until tonight's launch. So again, the second stage will continue to secure Dragon's entry into low Earth orbit before separating, leaving Dragon to continue its journey to the space station on its own thrusters. About 40 seconds after separation, Dragon's nose cone deploy sequence will begin, which exposes its guidance navigation controls that help Dragon autonomously fly to the space station.
With T0 coming up in just about 19 minutes and 30 seconds, our teams at the Cape and Hangar X are doing a series of system checks to ensure Dragon and Falcon 9 are ready. Let's check in with Ronnie for a quick status update. Ronnie?
Thanks, Jesse. We are still looking good for an on-time launch about 19 minutes from now, and we'll keep monitoring all the vehicle systems as we get closer to liftoff. Both Dragon and Falcon 9 continue to be healthy. So as we continue to listen and watch the countdown, our teams are continuing to prep the vehicle for flight, and propellant loading of both RP1 and liquid oxygen began at T-minus 35 minutes. We also heard the call out a few minutes ago that the launch escape system is now armed. The range, which is monitoring keep-out zones, among other key flight requirements, also continues to report no issues, as they are go to support tonight's launch. Weather also looks good, and we are still tracking less than a 10% chance of violation at our target liftoff time. As a reminder, today we do have an instantaneous launch window, driven by the orbital mechanics constraints of 2 spacecraft meeting in orbit. The technical term for that meeting is called a rendezvous. The reason we need to launch at a specific time is because Dragon is basically trying to catch up to the ISS, which as we speak is orbiting the Earth at more than 17,000 miles per hour. That means we have to deliver Dragon to the correct orbit, and we also need to time its trajectory relative to the orbiting laboratory so that they are in the same place in orbit at the same time. A precise liftoff is crucial for achieving a timely rendezvous between Dragon and the space station. So at this point, if we hear a hold called for any reason, we will have to stand down and target our backup launch opportunity, which is tomorrow at 10:31 p.m. Eastern. So with all systems go, I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca for a status update from Houston.
Thanks, Ronnie. The flight controllers here in Mission Control Houston are ensuring the space station is ready to receive Dragon. They're also checking that all the communication links between the station, Dragon, and the ground are working properly. Right now, everything is proceeding as planned. The teams here in Mission Control Houston, the team in Hawthorne, and the astronauts aboard the space station will monitor the autonomous docking of Dragon on Tuesday when they enter joint operations, which happens when the spacecraft enters the approach ellipsoid, which is an invisible boundary that helps us monitor spacecrafts arriving and departing. After docking, the crews will perform a series of leak checks and then work to...
working. Expect more words here in a few minutes, shooting for T-minus 10 minutes to get you a brief.
And we just received an update that we are proceeding towards launch. Once the crews perform those series of leak checks on board, they will work to open the hatches both on the Dragon side and inside the station's pressurized mating adapter. We expect hatch opening to take place about an hour and a half after docking. Once on board, the astronauts will be greeted by the space station crew and will then join in for welcoming remarks for the... Here in Mission Control, Flight Director Garrett Hain is on console overseeing the team for launch, and Paul Kanya will be on console on Tuesday for docking. That's it from here in Mission Control Houston. I'll toss it back to the team in Florida. Megan, how's it looking?
Thank you, Rebecca. If you're just joining us, we are now at T-minus 16 minutes, 7 seconds and counting from the 8th astronaut rotation mission to the International Space Station under NASA's Commercial Crew Program. Rajachari, commander of the SpaceX, NASA SpaceX Crew-3 mission here with me. And Raja, we just heard a call out saying to expect another crew brief at T-minus 10 minutes about the crack that the teams are currently monitoring in the side hatch seal.
Yep, and that's a pretty standard at T-minus 10 is usually when they've kind of done all the final polling and usually give an update to the crew and for the crew to make sure that they're all ready to go inside the capsule as well. And since we know of at least that one open issue, that's also kind of the logical time for them to update Crew-8 on the status of that before they go into the final terminal count. Not to say that they can't continue working it during that 10 minutes, but that's sort of I think the checkpoint they gave the crew of when they'll give them some information about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it's always exciting, and I think the administrator said exactly what we would expect and exactly why we do what we do, that of course safety will be paramount. Of course we want to see them launch. Obviously the families want to see them launch. Crew-8 wants to get there, and the expedition on the space station wants to see them, but clearly we want everyone to be safe, so yeah. I know the team will do what they need to do.
So we're taking the steps towards launch, but we're waiting for that T-minus 10 brief to really give us the final
Right,
resolution.
so we'll continue doing stuff in parallel to be ready to go,
Sure.
But obviously the analysis still has to get completed.
So when Crew-8 arrives at the International Space Station, they will be greeted by 7 other crew members, including NASA astronaut Laurel O'Hara. She's been on board since last September and delivered this personal message to her soon-to-be new crewmates.
Hey, Crew-8. I'm so stoked for your launch and to welcome you on board the International Space Station. I very vividly remember my first few days on Space Station, so I'm looking forward to getting to relive those days through your eyes, and I'll try not to laugh too much. Matt, it's been an amazing 7 years so far. It's going to be really special to get to fly with you, such a good friend, and I know this is going to be one of our craziest adventures together yet. Mike, can't wait to share this boat with you. Jeanette, looking forward to continuing the good times that we had in Star City together. Sasha, there's no ice rink on board, but we have some other games planned up here. I hope you guys have a beautiful launch. I hope you enjoy the special time that you're going to get to have in Dragon together orbiting Earth. And we'll be on board waiting with a big meal prepared with all the foods that we don't like. So with that, safe travels, and I'll see you on the other side of the hatch on Space Station.
I like that she said she'll try not to laugh so much as we're inviting 3 new first-time flyers onto the space station.
Yeah, Laurel is infamous for easily getting cases of the giggle, so it's awesome to see her. It's been so fun to watch her and the current ISS expedition crew loving working in space, and so I know she's excited as well as the rest of Crew 7 to see Crew-8 and Laurel's time, but she'll eventually get replaced by TC, who will be launching later in March from Star City on the next Soyuz up to replace Laurel. So we'll be tuning into that just a few weeks from now on March 21st.
T-minus 12 minutes, 48 seconds and counting. We are counting down really to a T-minus 10 brief with the crew to talk an issue that the team is working. Roger, can you talk to us about that? What are your final thoughts as we approach that?
Yeah, so I mean, we got to see, I think we kind of had an inkling just watching, you even brought it up as we were watching the hatch close out, just a lot more time taking pictures. And as we talked about at the time, the reason we do that, and they mentioned even back then, they said they maybe saw hair. And so as they go through and analyze those pictures, it sounds like, at least from what we could hear on the loops we can hear, and there's probably a whole bunch more going on in the background, that they're doing some analysis to see that a crack they saw in one of the photos, it sounds like. Whether that case and the analysis shows that we have what's called margin, meaning there's not any concerns for the worst case scenario of a re-entry, as it sounds like what they're calling the bounding case. So that analysis I expect will be ongoing. It would not be unusual for them to tell the crew, even at T-minus 10, like, hey, we're still working it. We'll get you an update prior to launch. Because again, the more time you buy the team to do the analysis, the more conclusive of a recommendation they can come to. So I would expect them to be poring over that data, and like we talked about earlier in the show, that's why we have all these teams here looking at the data.
Sure.
There's no more important thing than the human and human space flight, and so we want to be absolutely sure that they are good to go on their way to the space station.
And when we take that wide shot of Falcon 9 on the pad, we see a lot of venting happening. Again, propellant loading continues.
Dragon SpaceX for a follow-up.
Go ahead.
All right. We are confident that we understand the issue and we can still fly the whole mission safely. We're comfortable proceeding because the condition is bounding by existing analysis, as already mentioned. Additionally, we expect the gap created by this crack in the seal to close as the material will swell with re-entry heating. And finally, it's on the lower heating side of the vehicle during re-entry. The engineering team here is comfortable proceeding. How copy?
Dragon copy.
Okay, so
with that, Crew-8, confirmed displays are configured for launch.
All right, so with that, it seems like we are go for launch. The team telling the crew they are confident.
SpaceX Dragon, displays are configured for launch. Crew-7, this is Crew-8, we're coming for you. It's time for Crew-8 to relieve you of the watch onto the International Space Station. SpaceX Dragon, we are ready for you to cast off the strongback and launch Dragon Endeavour on its fifth voyage.
There you have it, the team confident that they can fly this mission end to end. So now, in this final stretch of the countdown, we're going to turn it over to Sandra and Ronnie at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California, to take us through launch and ascent.
We copied all. Godspeed, Crew-8.
Thanks so much. So with that and Crew-8 sounding excited for liftoff, our next major countdown event will be around the T-minus 9.5 minute mark when the Falcon 9 launch commit criteria get checked by computers. So right now we're listening in for that call. The launch commit criteria are specific thresholds and pieces of information about the entire Falcon 9 system needed to make sure that the rocket is healthy. Of course, we have many systems in place to ensure that the rocket and crew are both safe leading up to liftoff and during flight, now that we're approaching terminal count. Our teams are performing all those final checks before launch.
Back in Mission Control Houston, there's a variety of systems and console positions that are also being worked in tandem and monitored by the team. These include cameras aboard space station, reboost capabilities, as well as a console that monitors trajectory to ensure everything is looking good. It'll be about a 9-minute ride to orbit today, and that's about the time that we'll see second stage cut off. A few minutes after that is when we'll see Crew Dragon separate from the second stage. And along the way leading up to this, you'll be hearing some performance calls as we get into the final countdown, and then after liftoff as well. These are SpaceX flight controllers reporting on trajectory, speed, booster performance, and key milestones. But there are some other calls you'll hear the crew make as well after liftoff. The crew will report out number and letter combinations, which mark different abort zones throughout the flight up the eastern seaboard. The first two, 1A and 1B, have that name because they're in the first stage, and that will last until they're up to the very north of North Carolina. The next are 2A through 2E. Those will come into play once the second stage kicks in. That takes us from the top of North Carolina all the way to the tip of Newfoundland in the northern Atlantic. Diverting a little bit from the other naming systems, you will hear the call Shannon, or Forward to Shannon, which refers to Shannon, Ireland, meaning they would target off the coast of Ireland if they were later in that second stage and did need to abort. So again, you'll hear these different callouts throughout the flight uphill, along with key performance callouts from guidance, navigation, and control officers, and you can expect to hear from them on calls on trajectory and propulsion as well.
So one of the next callouts we're listening for is the announcement that Stage 1 engine chill has started, which is one of the key processes that prepares the engines for flight. Right now, propellant in the tanks is isolated from the engines, but at T-minus 7 minutes, we'll open the engine pre-valves and start passing just a trickle of liquid oxygen through the Merlin engine pumps,
Engine chill has
chilling the
started.
engines for the start sequence. There we go, right on time. Now, we do this because the super chilled and densified liquid oxygen is really, really cold, and we use this process to bring the engine hardware down to a cooler temperature before flowing all of the LOX and propellant into it during flight. At liftoff, Falcon 9 is consuming 700 gallons of fuel per second, so engine chill helps us to prevent thermal shock and ensures nominal engine performance. So again, now that we've got that good engine chill call out, shortly after that, we should be looking for that Stage 1 RP1 load complete call.
So with that engine chill now underway,
Stage 1
we're
RP1
looking
load
ahead to the call out that RP1 load is, and there you heard it, RP1 load is complete. RP1 is densified kerosene or rocket fuel that will propel the crew into orbit. All of that RP1 is now loaded into the first stage, and we did hear that the second stage was completed a short time ago as well. We're still loading liquid oxygen on the first and second stages. This is the oxidizer needed to combine with the densified kerosene that just finished up loading. Coming up, we'll hear the call for Dragon to configure for terminal count and then transition over to internal power. Then we'll hear the propellant tanks on Falcon 9 are getting ready to pressurize, adding some additional rigidity and structural support as we get ready for the strong back to retract. At first, it will move just a couple of degrees, and then we'll see it swing open completely the moment of liftoff. That strong back provides access to Falcon 9's fueling lines and umbilicals for both prop load and the different gases being loaded on board. We'll continue to check through a couple more fueling milestones, including one around the 2-minute mark before flight, where we will hear that the liquid oxygen is finished on board the second stage.
Dragon is then configured for terminal count. Falcon 9 tanks pressurizing for strong back retract.
And we did just hear that call out. Dragon is in terminal count. The onboard computers now are taking control of this spacecraft. The first stage will finish liquid oxygen loading in about 3 minutes, followed by completion of second stage LOX loading 1 minute later.
Strong back retract has started.
There's a call out over the nets that we are moving forward into strong back retract. The next thing you might be able to see on your screen is actually going to be the clamp arms opening up around the base of this second stage. That will allow the strong back to recline about 2 degrees away from the vehicle. And because we've now begun pressurizing Falcon 9, we know that it's strong enough to stand on its own. That TE will throw back all the way to 45 degrees at liftoff. The strong back is part of the transporter erector, which provides liquids, gases, and electrical connections to the vehicle. There you can see those clamp arms have fully opened around the base of just the trunk of Dragon on stage 2.
And so the next major milestone that we're tracking today is stage 1 LOX load being complete. We expect that call out at about 3 minutes when that first stage LOX load will be completely finished. So all those white clouds of vapor you see on your screen right now are normal, and we'll continue to see them build up as we get even closer to launch. Because liquid oxygen is super chilled, it boils off a little bit in the warm Florida air. In for the call out that stage 1 LOX load is complete.
Stage 1 LOX load complete.
There's the confirmation that we have completed loading liquid oxygen on board stage 1, but LOX will still be loading for about another minute on board stage 2. Then we'll prepare to vent down the TE, which is going to produce another white
Dragon
cloud.
is in terminal count and is on internal
You may also
power.
hear. There's confirmation that Dragon is on internal power. You may also hear an announcement to the crew about that venting procedure.
So everything continuing to go as planned this evening. We are now 2 minutes and 20 seconds away from the launch of Crew-8. Standing by in about 15 seconds, we should hear the call out that the second stage LOX load is complete and that Dragon is in auto idle.
Stage 2 LOX load complete.
And with that, you did hear that LOX load is complete. Gas closeout has also begun, so we're now isolating all the feed lines for the different gas systems from the Falcon 9 rocket. They'll then get... Great news, continuing to move towards launch, and you could even hear some of those gases being vented over just shortly. And you can hear it even better now. Something else you might see here in a few moments is water being poured onto the pad. Because rockets are super loud, the sound can impart loads back on the rocket itself, so that water helps absorb and prevent the sound from hitting the structure and reverberating back onto the rocket. Coming up on 1 minute until launch.
Dragon is in countdown.
The flight termination system is armed, and we are in
Dragon,
countdown.
SpaceX, go for
45
launch.
seconds.
Dragon copies. Go for launch.
Reports go. Crew reports go. Now about 30 seconds away from liftoff.
Seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Engines full power. And liftoff of NASA Crew-8. Go Falcon, go SpaceX, and go NASA.
One Alpha.
Endeavour ascends, a beacon of human ambition. 1.7 million pounds of thrust now propelling Falcon 9 and Crew-8. Vehicle is pitching down range.
Nominal power and telemetry.
And we are getting good call-outs on propulsion. Falcon 9 engines now throttling down to help pass through the period of maximum dynamic pressure.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
With that call out, we know that Falcon 9 is now moving faster than the speed of sound.
Stage 1 throttle up.
1 Bravo.
So with that call out,
Copy 1 Bravo.
we know that Falcon 9 is throttling back up, and that 1 call out for 1 Bravo means that we are in the second and final abort mode for the first stage, continuing to get good performance from Falcon 9. Now at this point, the crew are already pulling over 2 Gs. And with that call out, we know that that engine chill for MVAC, which is our second stage engine, has now also begun. That also means we have a couple of events that are going to happen in rapid succession. First is that chill on the MVAC engine, and then we'll have main engine cutoff, or MECO, where the 9 engines on the first stage of Falcon 9 will cut off ahead of first and second stage separation. Then the Merlin vacuum engine on board the second stage will ignite and carry the Crew-8 astronauts to orbit, while the first stage begins its journey back to Earth. At this point in the flight, the 9 Merlin
Stage one,
engines
throttle
are starting to throttle down, and we're standing... There's that call out for throttle down, and we're standing by for MECO.
MECO. Stage separation confirmed. MVAC ignition.
2 Alpha.
Copy 2 Alpha.
So those incredible views on your screen, and of course the cheering behind me, means that we have had successful main engine cutoff, stage separation, and ignition of our MVAC engine on board stage 2. We are also in 2 Alpha for the aborts if needed. Of course, that second stage is being illuminated on the right-hand side of your screen by our single Merlin vacuum engine on board stage 2. Now, the next milestone we're tracking is the stage 1 boost back burn on the left-hand side of your screen. And we are expecting completion of that burn in just about 10 seconds.
And so Crew-8 is now traveling at over 4,000 miles per hour. We're continuing to get good call outs, everything going really smoothly today. That second stage will continue firing until we reach about 8 minutes into the flight.
Dragon SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
Dragon.
Good performance on the lone Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage. The crew's G-load dips right when we hit the separation event, and it's going to continue to build up now. Again, we just heard another call out for nominal trajectory. That was the guidance, navigation, and control officer stating nominal trajectory, or everything is looking good. Dragon is pointed in the right direction, continuing its flight uphill. This second stage will continue to fire until a little over 8 minutes into the flight, accelerating Dragon to more than 17,000 miles per hour and placing the crew in orbit. Right now, the crew is traveling at 4,500 miles per hour and is over 93 miles in altitude. That single Merlin vacuum engine can produce over 220,000 pounds of thrust in the vacuum of space, and you really see it doing the heavy lifting right now.
So while Crew-8 continues on its way to the International Space Station, the first stage booster is on its way back to landing zone 1.
SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
Confirmation there that the trajectory for both vehicles is looking good. Now, the first stage has a couple of events itself in order to land. At T plus 6 minutes and 16 seconds, stage 1 will begin its entry burn, which will be the first of 2 burns prior to landing. During this burn, Falcon 9 will ignite only the center engine for about 10 seconds in order to slow the vehicle down before it reaches the denser parts of the Earth's atmosphere. That will be followed by the landing burn at T plus 7 minutes and 21 seconds. This time we'll light 3 engines, and the burn will last for about 20 seconds, ending just about a minute before we expect Dragon to be inserted into orbit.
And so we did also hear a couple of different ground station call outs like Bermuda. That is one of the ground stations that we're receiving telemetry from, and everything continues to look really good with the trajectory. The crew now traveling over 6,000 miles per hour. Again, this second stage will continue to light for a couple more minutes before second engine cutoff. At that point, the vehicle will coast for a few minutes before separation. It looks like we're starting to get some views of the Florida coast there on the first stage as it continues to make its way back to Earth.
Dragon SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
Continuing to get good call outs, everything going smoothly. Now almost 7 minutes into the flight of Crew-8.
So the next milestone we're standing by for is Stage 1 landing burn start. Again, as Stage 1 approaches the Space Coast to touch back down at Landing Zone 1.
Stage 2 FTS is safed.
And it is great to see that first stage back on Earth. Coming up, next on the second stage is second engine cutoff. You can hear some excitement here at Hawthorne at SpaceX headquarters as that first stage successfully landed back on Earth. So second engine cutoff will take place here in just a couple of minutes. Once the lone Merlin engine cuts off and stops firing, the second stage will continue to coast for about 3 minutes until Dragon is commanded to separate. At this point, Dragon will separate from the second stage and will fly free with Crew-8 still on board and in orbit.
Shannon!
Copy, Shannon.
And that call out for Shannon, indicative of Shannon, Ireland, the very last abort zone in the second stage. The Merlin engine is about to shut down. You just saw it there on your screen.
Dragon SpaceX, nominal orbit insertion.
Hearing good call-outs following second stage cutoff. The crew is in a nominal or as expected orbit. That is great news. That launch escape system. And we are getting our first view of Crew-8 inside Endeavour. 3 of them in space for the very first time. So again, we'll continue to coast for these few minutes after that second stage just shut down. This helps to allow rates and motion to settle out. There are actually small reaction thrusters on the upper part of the second stage that can be used to counteract any residual motion, basically making sure that we're in a stable coast before Dragon separates from Falcon. We expect that separation here to occur at about the 12-minute mark into the flight. So again, we did hear that the crew has been successfully inserted into a good orbit. This is the crew in microgravity, 3 of them for the very first time, all good call-outs.
So right now, the second stage is performing a series of checkouts as we prepare to separate Dragon from stage 2.
And so we will see that separation coming up in just a couple of minutes, after which a number of activation checkouts occur automatically. First, we'll be checking out 12 of the Draco maneuvering thrusters all around the service section of the Dragon spacecraft. And then we'll also begin to get ready for nose cone opening. Nose cone stays closed for the flight uphill to help protect all of those guidance, navigation, and control sensors. It also covers 4 of the Draco thrusters that will be used for the majority of the different phase burns, requiring Dragon to catch up to the International Space Station. So we are standing by for Dragon separation to occur here in just about 30 seconds from now.
Of course, the view you have right now on your screen. Oh, actually, now that our view has transitioned, you're getting a great view of Dragon's heat shield. This camera is on top of stage 2 and looking up into Dragon's trunk.
So if you're just joining us this evening, we had a successful launch of Crew-8. They're on their way to the International Space Station. The first stage has already returned to Earth and landed successfully, and the second stage has shut down, and we're awaiting separation, and you see it on your screen right there. Dragon and Endeavour now flying free.
Dragon, SpaceX, this is your launch chief engineer.
Go ahead.
Welcome to orbit. It truly is our greatest honor for you to trust us to launch you into space. It's been a pleasure working with you, and we trust that all the science and work you're about to do will continue to move humanity further towards the stars. We hope you enjoyed the ride, and thank you for flying on Falcon 9. Please send our regards to Crew 7, and make sure to remind them you just wanted to be fashionably late. I'll hand it off to the launch director for a few words.
Dragon LD, I hope the ride was as awesome as a Cybertruck. Have a safe journey to the space station, and we look forward to seeing you when you get home. Thank you for flying SpaceX.
SpaceX, oh my goodness, what an incredible ride to orbit. I'm both glad and not glad that you don't have a copy of our ICS. The cheers the whole way up were incredible. A big thank you to SpaceX for incredible instructors. Tyler, I'm talking to you and your team right now. Incredible instructors, engineers, and operators. They're the reason we are now safely in orbit. A thank you to NASA, Roscosmos, CSA, ESA, JAXA, who worked together to make the International Space Station work for us all. And of course, big thank you to my family, friends, and mentors who are the reason we're here today. Over to you, Mike.
Yeah, hey, Earth, just to let you know, it's kind of like a roller coaster ride with a bunch of really excited teenagers. Just want to mention the NASA community is just a really warm but steely-eyed family that does amazing things, and it kind of hugs you, but it pushes you into the unknown while watching your back. It's really been an incredible place for me to grow over these past 30-plus years, and now I'm really honored to fly this new generation spaceship with this new generation crew. Thanks to my own family for tolerating my otherworldly habits. Thanks to NASA for being the backbone of exploration that we are. And just thanks so much to our friends and colleagues at SpaceX for the awesome ride. It's great to be back in space again.
And I would like to second Mike and Matt's words. I'm super excited to be here. And, I need to here, and the words that come to my mind is that I'm so grateful and I'm thankful for everyone who got us to this point. There's no way we would have been able to do this without all the people, from all the instructors, from all the people supporting on the ground, to the folks in the kitchen who kept us fed, and moves out at SpaceX. I'm so grateful for everyone, and I just want to give a big thanks to my family and friends who came from all over the world to see this. Thank you for supporting me through all the days of waiting to get to this point. Thank you for everything, and I want to give a quick shout out to my sisters who couldn't make it, Brenda and Patty, and then I'd also want to give a nod to Syracuse who supported me through everything, and I am in a New York state of mind right now. It is amazing. Thank you for everything.
Warm greetings to everyone from the orbit. I would like to express huge gratitude to Roscosmos, NASA, ESA, JAXA teams, and all who took part in preparation and implementation. A separate shout out to my family and friends. Thank you for your support. My sons, Serежа, Vlad, Sasha, be good. Кузбасс, Москве. See you soon. Всех тепло приветствую с орбиты. Выражаю огромную благодарность коллективу Роскосмоса, НАСА и САДЖАКСа и всем без исключения причастным к подготовке и реализации нашего полета. Отдельный привет передаю своей семье и близким. Спасибо вам за поддержку. Сыновьям Сережа, Влад, Саша, будьте молодцами. Кузбасс, Москве, до встречи.
Dragon, we copied all, and we see the vehicle chasing down the International Space Station on orbit. Nose cone opening is in progress. We saw nominal dehumidifier activation and service section Draco checkouts. With that, your go to raise visors. And I've got one final note. We have a tradition on board this spacecraft for its travelers to bring a small token, a zero-G indicator, if you will, to clearly demonstrate the free-floating nature of objects traveling in orbit around the Earth. And I wonder if you've brought anything fitting that description.
Well, you should ask. Oh, man. So per tradition, we, of course, have a zero-G indicator. It's already been deployed. The significance of our zero-G indicator is not actually what it is, but who chose it. Many parents around the world have jobs that take them away from their children and families for long periods of time to serve their communities, their country, and the world. Military families are a prime example, but many jobs, including our own, share this trait. The choice of the zero-G indicator was given to my daughters to represent the sacrifice that children everywhere make while their parents are serving away from home. We chose a stuffed family dog, and she is free-floating here today.
Matt, we copied all good words. I think we don't have video inside the capsule. We'll have to come back with you in a minute for a video of that stuffed dog.
No worries, thanks.
So right now on your screen, you do have that initial video of nose cone deployment. And again, the nose cone is opening to expose those two sets of hooks that Dragon will use to autonomously dock with the International Space Station. Of course, loved hearing that crew's description of their zero-G indicator, and we're standing by for those views. Zero-G indicators really do become an important symbol of microgravity flight and the communities behind each mission. So for those of you following along, you'll know that our first zero-G passenger was Little Earth on Demonstration Mission 1. Here's Little Earth on board Dragon on that DM-1 flight, and later on board the ISS. Today, just 5 years later, we've reached 50 people flown to space. From 0G to 50 in just 5 years is pretty incredible. And of course, here in Hawthorne, I actually have the real Little Earth that went to space safely back on Earth with us here in Hawthorne. Little Earth is a celebration of zero-gravity indicators, an essential component of space missions that help mark the transition into 0G. From Yuri Gagarin's famous pencil to modern indicators like Little Earth and demonstration missions to Tremor the sequin dinosaur, zero-gravity indicators have become a way for all of us to connect with and celebrate human spaceflight. Human spaceflight has come so far in the last 5 years. SpaceX has launched 9 human spaceflight missions on behalf of NASA and 4 commercial astronaut missions. That's a total of 50 crew members to space since 2020, 34 on behalf of NASA and their partners, and 16 commercial astronauts, including the first all-civilian mission to space and the first all-private passenger mission to the International Space Station.
In addition to flying people, SpaceX also enables researchers the opportunity to fly critical science to orbit. SpaceX and Dragon carried over 1,000 research experiments to and from low Earth orbit and the International Space Station, and transported over 300,000 pounds to and from the station since 2012. Researchers from around the world use the space station to address complex human health problems on Earth, studying disease formation, testing drugs and diagnostic tools, and examining the inner workings of the human body. At any one time, the station hosts hundreds of investigations spanning every major scientific discipline from physics to microbiology.
Every mission yields critical research and learnings that help make life both on Earth and in space better. From DNA sequencing to 3D printing, studies on the space station test a variety of technologies, systems, and materials that will benefit life on Earth
Dragon,
and be
SpaceX.
needed for
We see a
future
nominal
long-duration
nose cone
exploration
opening,
missions.
ECS and forward bulkhead Draco checkouts, and we see an upcoming burn in 23 minutes, 2-3.
getting great views of Crew-8 on board their capsule there and standing by hoping we might get a shot. There is their zero-G indicator. Loved hearing the crew's description of who chose this animal and why, and everything that it means to them, to their mission, and obviously the community standing behind each of these 4 astronauts.
And in addition to that, we heard some great words from the crew expressing their thanks and excitement to be on orbit. Really great to see them successfully on their way to the International Space Station. We had a successful nose cone deploy as well as those Draco checkouts, everything continuing to go really smooth. So for now, we're going to end our coverage from here in Hawthorne until we pick back up with our docking coverage in about 26 hours.
So for now, we're going to hand it back over to Megan and Raja at Kennedy Space Center to wrap up today's launch coverage.
If you're just joining us, welcome to Kennedy Space Center in Florida, where we just watched Crew-8 lift off from Launch Pad 39A. 3 NASA astronauts and 1 cosmonaut now en route to the International Space Station. I'm Megan Cruz. This is NASA astronaut Raja Chari, and we got to see an incredible launch. What a clear night.
That was amazing.
Dragon SpaceX. Cabin environment looks good for suit doffing, and we'll take the camera external here in just a sec. Your go for 4.012 suit doffing.
And that's the question we were just talking about before we got back online was when are they going to actually start doffing their suits?
Happy to go, 4.012 suit doffing.
And so you heard the calls there. So first they wait for the nose cone to get open. They wait for the Dracos to be safed, which was the launch escape system. And then once they've verified the cabin atmosphere is good, that's when they can take off their suits. And as you heard them say, they're going to take the cameras external, because basically they're taking off their spacesuit. And it's pretty sweaty after you've been laying on the back for a while. But you could hear in all their voices the excitement. And like you said, what an amazing night down here at the Cape. It was super clear. You could see.
Dragon cameras are exterior.
You could actually see the staging, and it was
Copy external.
Amazing view, and I got to see the first stage come back, so it was a super clear night, and we got to see the second stage turn into just a very faint star all the way at Seco.
Yeah, and it's great to see some friends launch of yours. You're really close with Matt and Mike, I understand, and really it's nice to see a launch because we really waited till T-minus 10 minutes to know whether or not we were going to go.
Yep, yeah, and it's it's always exciting when it comes to space flight, even more exciting when it comes to human space flight, and just great to see the team come up with a technical solution, look at all the data. As you heard, them keeping the crew informed, like we talked many times tonight. The core is the person and the Capcom that they are talking to, but there is literally hundreds of people talking on loops and making engineering decisions and trying to go back and look at analysis data. And so a great testament to the team tonight to pull all that data together, as they always do.
Yeah, and to make sure that they're safe at launch and also re-entry. So great to see the launch again. And once they get to the space station, they're going to have a hand in some incredible science and investigations. And here's Jasmine Hopkins with more on that.
Thank you so much, Megan. That's right. We saw another beautiful, spectacular launch from here on the Space Coast. And joining us now is Dr. Ji from Emory University to talk about Project Eagle. So, Dr. Ji, what is Project Eagle?
Our goal is to investigate the impact of space microgravity on human heart microtissues. These tissues are generated from stem cells, and they are a potential source of cells for cardiac regeneration. One challenge is that these heart stem cells are largely immature, meaning that they're not as fully developed as the heart cells in our body. So we are trying to find ways to push these cells to develop further, because transplanting immature cells could actually increase the risk of complications. The good news is that we found this heart muscle cells become more mature under ground-based simulated microgravity. And we would like to confirm that observation under real space microgravity.
Right, so we're kind of taking what we've learned here on Earth and seeing if we can apply it in space. So with that in mind, we've been studying heart health in space for quite a long time now. So is Project Eagle going to tie into any of the other research we've already done?
Great question. Yes. Actually, our experiment is built up on several interesting studies on the space station, including our own. For example, on the space station, heart stem cells or precursor cells grow faster than under standard gravity. So in our new experiment, we would like to learn if this beating heart muscle cells can develop further and become more mature under space microgravity.
Right, so we're kind of taking that that research to the next step there, and of course that's really important because we're looking at going even deeper into space. But actually, is things like Project Eagle, could that actually help us on Earth? What we're learning in space for our heart, could that benefit our heart health on Earth as well?
That's good. Another good question. Yeah. So we hope to learn, identify the molecules or conditions that can be helpful to promote the maturation of heart cells, because that could help us develop new strategies to push the cells become more mature on Earth. More mature heart cells are more reliable for repairing damaged heart, and those more mature heart cells are also useful for develop new medications to treat patients with heart disease.
Right. Yeah. So it's great to see, we're taking it in space, also benefiting our life here on Earth. Thank you so much, Dr. G. We really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Of course. All right, Megan and Raja, back to you.
All right, we're about to wrap up our coverage here, but I want to take one last social media question because this one is super cute. This one is from a 4-year-old, Robbie, and he wants to know, what will the crew do to pass the time on the way to the space station?
Well, Robbie, hopefully your parents are typing for you and you don't have your own social media account as a 4-year-old. But it's actually probably the best time, both at the beginning of the mission and at the end of the mission, because on the ISS, your timeline down to 5-minute increments. So you're going. So this time in the Dragon on the way up and the way down is kind of the time to honestly look out the window, enjoy the fact that you're in space. For all of us, we've trained and spent most of our life getting ready for this moment, so actually getting to savor that and enjoy it. And you heard Mike Barratt talk about being able to look. He said it was like being in a roller coaster with a bunch of teenagers. So, it sounds like there's a lot of joy in that capsule right now. On the serious side, they'll probably be working with the cameras, taking some Earth observation photos, things like that. But it's mostly just starting to get the cargo ready so that when they do dock, they can be ready to go. They'll have to now start worrying about the rendezvous timeline, so they'll be monitoring the burn. So each time there's a phasing burn to get them closer to the space station, they'll be monitoring that and preparing for it. And then when it gets time to do the actual rendezvous, they'll get back in their suits and then start monitoring the systems and being ready to jump in for anything that's off nominal. So they do keep relatively busy.
I was going to say, sounds like they're doing a lot over the next...
There's plenty to be done, but it is a nice chance just to decompress a bit and enjoy the fact that you're in space. And there's some adaptation so that the ISS is a much bigger volume, so it's actually kind of helpful to use the Dragon where you're confined. You're pretty clumsy at first, and so you can't go very far without running into something and stopping. So you can use the Dragon as sort of like with training wheels, get used to microgravity before you get on the space station and go.
So they can actually get out of their suits in these next 28
hours.
Right.
So when you heard them say they could do the suit doffing procedure, they're absolutely unstrapping, taking the suits off, putting on some more comfortable clothes, and probably depending on their timeline, they may immediately go to bed. They may have some time to eat and then get up later. So it all depends on the docking timeline.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for that insight. And Robbie, thank you so much for that question. That's going to do it for us here on NASA TV. But you can follow along with Crew-8's entire ride to the station by listening in to real-time mission audio. And you can check that out by scanning the QR code on your screen. Or if, again, you're watching us on your phone, just screen grab the code and then you can click on it later. Now, Matthew, Michael, Jeanette, and Alexander are on course to arrive at the International Space Station around 3 a.m. Eastern Time on March 5th, so Tuesday. On-camera coverage of docking and arrival will resume about 2 hours before on NASA TV. And that's really always fun to watch,
Oh,
Raja.
yeah, absolutely. Just the faces of the crew. I think we showed some clips from earlier before, but it's both exciting because they're coming onto the space station. It's so bizarre to have trained so much at Johnson Space Center in the mock-ups and then see the real thing, and it's upside down or sideways, and just your mind trying to take that all in. And I guarantee the smiles are going to be huge. As you saw, Laurel's excited to see him. Everyone's excited to see everyone. It's a really weird family reunion when it happens in space, but it's probably one of the most fun ones to have.
Well, and of course, before we sign off from Kennedy, I want to thank Rajachari for joining us, co-hosting his second launch with us. I hope you had a good time.
I did, yeah.
Okay.
I think I outwore the jinx this time, so I
Thank
finally
you.
got.
I appreciate that. What we're going to do is sign you up for Crew-9. That's right. You heard it here, folks. Crew-9, Rajachari co-host. And a huge thanks to all of our guests for joining us today, but most importantly, thank you all for watching. And you can keep up with any updates on this mission using the online resources we're going to put on your screen right now. For everyone here at NASA and SpaceX, have a great morning. or evening. It's still 11:25, and we'll leave you now with a look back at highlights from suit up to liftoff. Inside the suit up room, where we see our 3 astronauts and 1 cosmonaut. And the point of this card game is so that the commander loses, to use up his bad luck. Here they come, Crew-8, taking their first steps outside before their journey to the International Space Station. Crew is departing from the operations and checkout building across Kennedy Space Center to launch pad 39A, walking over to get a good look at their ride to space. Commander Matt Dominic, pilot Michael Barratt walking down the crew access arm.
See, the techs are making sure their helmet is protected on the way in.
Jeanette Epps, Alexandra Gravenkin are 2 mission specialists for Crew-8, walking on that sticky tape to grab anything before they ingress as well.
We see 4 seats in the launch position.
They're closing the hatch now.
Full power and liftoff of NASA Crew-8. Go Falcon, go SpaceX, and go NASA.
Endeavour ascends, a beacon of human mission. 1.7 million pounds of thrust now propelling Falcon 9 and Crew-8. Vehicle is pitching down range.